The whole thing is a railroad job. Yeah, well, there's a video circulating which doesn't necessarily say what some people are suggesting it says, of DeSantis seemingly to not be categorically opposed to the idea that if Trump gets convicted, he should still be on the ballot. I don't think it goes quite so far as to say that he suggests he should be taken off the ballot on the primaries if he is convicted. But DeSantis categorically saying if Trump is convicted, he's got no chance at the general, which I think is wrong. I think it's a wildly inaccurate prediction assessment. I think it's actually probably the inverse. Thereafter, they just want a conviction. They just want a conviction. They just need one. It's going to be one little hit of that conviction. You know what's going to happen? Prediction number 2. See how many I can get right today. Although they might not go to trial in time. Inasmuch as I predicted that the New York hush money payment indictment was not going to be the one-off, the only one they needed and they'll be happy with. It was going to be the small domino pushing all the others over. And it led to what it's led to now. 6 indictments. New York, D.C., Florida, Georgia, and Colorado's not an indictment. But they're going to get one conviction after another to the extent any of these go to trial. I've qualified my prediction. So if it doesn't go to trial, I'll be right. Because they'll get convictions if it goes to trial. They just want one lick of that sweet, sweet conviction. And despite the fact that they don't even have one, they're still moving on removing Trump from the ballot for insurrection. Even there has been no conviction of insurrection, no charge of insurrection, and all there has been, making a gesture that someone's going to use, is an acquittal on an impeachment for inciting an insurrection. They have an acquittal on the charge, no charge and no conviction in a criminal court. That's enough for them to remove him from the ballot in Colorado, which is where we're going right now. Okay. Oh, deep breaths, cleansing air down to the diaphragm. Joe Neerman. Oh, I gotta pull this up. I don't think I put this in my backdrop, but Joe Neerman, Good Logic, the following program on Twitter, has been doing a live stream commentary of this. I find it too painful to do. The audio from the court in Colorado sucks. This is the civil case to have Trump removed from the ballot by 6 concerned voting citizens, 4 of whom are Republican, allegedly. They want to have Trump removed from the ballot. The trial is being streamed, which is where some of this confusion comes from. I should say, the trial is being broadcast on the interwebs. The audio sucks. It's impossible to hear, impossible to follow, very unpleasant to actually do a live commentary. Joe's doing it, and kudos to him. Yesterday, and this brings back a memory for me, but this is what happened yesterday as Joe is live stream commentating on the Colorado trial. And who did they have on? Well, we'll get to it later. Here, listen to this. I'm not going to play the whole 5-minute clip, but you'll see the look of terror in Joe's face in a second.
Your Honor, while we're waiting, there's one issue. We've been informed that somebody is live streaming the court proceedings on the internet without permission to record it and to sort of doing commentary as it goes.
Did you get busted?
Beyond the scope of who's there. I mean, I don't know how to get in touch with them, but maybe an admonition that they're watching.
Look at Joe's face. So I know exactly what Joe's feeling right now. Once upon a time in Canada, there was a case, and they said specifically, no rebroadcast of the video or audio, no taking pictures, no publishing pictures outside the courtroom. I was like, okay, good. I had the brilliant idea. What I'm going to do for my crowd, it was fairly certain it was Tamara Leach's trial, one of the hearings. I said, I'm going to listen to it in my ear, and I'm just going to say what's happening in real time. I'm not broadcasting audio. I'm not broadcasting video. And nobody's preventing me from live tweeting summaries of what's going on, as other journalists were doing. And so I was doing that. I was listening and talking. And then in court, I hear them say, it's been brought to our attention that someone's live streaming this trial. Exact same thing. And my heart sank. And I'm like, that's it. I'm going to get disbarred. I'm going to get sanctioned. My life is going to be ruined. It wasn't me because I wasn't actually breaking the rules. It was another guy, but it doesn't matter. This is what's going on in Joe's head right now. Look at that. That's like, oh shit.
What?
It was at that moment that Joe knew. He didn't screw up at all, by the way.
Be appropriate.
And we know that they're not part of the expanded media coverage.
They're not part of the expanded media coverage. This is on the internet, Madam Justice.
Yes.
Look at Joe's.
Did you get busted?
Is this me? Are you talking to me?
Do we know what organization it is?
appears to be an individual, Your Honor, but there were like 7,000 people watching them.
So not Joe, but I want to know who this person is.
7,000? I have 1,900.
Turning first was now 8,600.
Okay, good.
It's Ashley Epp.
Ashley
Okay.
Epp. That's what I want to see. So I want to see who, because Ashley Epp. Let's see, Ashley Epps. We found Ashley. Ashley Epp. I don't think it could be this. Ashley Epps, and we're going to say Trump trial. I don't know who the person is. There was a typo there. So I'm not sure that we know. I don't know who it is yet. If anybody in the chat knows who the individual is, Ashley Epp, Trump trial. So if anybody knows who it is, do let me know, because when I heard the name Ashley Epp, then a number of other flags went out. So Joe did not get in trouble. He went to broadcast the C-SPAN hearing, which inconceivable to me that commentating on the C-SPAN broadcast, which is public and available to everyone, could possibly be violative of any court order. I would be the one erring on the side of not getting disbarred, but I'm no longer I'm not a member of a Florida bar. But anyway, that's it. So Joe's life flashed before his eyes right there. It was kind of fun to watch in real time. Now, some of the highlights from yesterday. I've watched enough of this trial. It's a flipping gong show. It's a joke of a trial in the sickest, saddest possible ways. They literally, in opening statements, I'll just do a little bit of the summary. In the opening statements, they literally said that when Trump used the word peacefully, it was a dog whistle, plausible deniability. That when he used the word peacefully to describe the protest that he was encouraging others to engage upon, that he only used the word peacefully because he meant violence. And so in using the word peaceful, other than it being plausible deniability, the only reason he had to use that word is because he knew that he was inciting violence, because if he wasn't inciting violence, he wouldn't have had to use the word peacefully to qualify the protest that he was encouraging. I'm not joking. Verbatim, summarized, paraphrased. They had an expert come on to testify on right-wing extremism and saying basically it's motivated reasoning, arguing from conclusions and towards them. Basically, whatever Trump says is inciting right-wing extremism because I take the overall context, history, and yada, yada, yada. Therefore, whenever someone who's not Trump would have hypothetically said it, it wouldn't have been, or I would need more details. They had an expert come and testify that Trump's method, his pattern of speech, was intended to incite right-wing extremism. Okay. Today, let me see this here. Oh, yeah, here. Today, this is just, one piece of evidence that, or this was from yesterday. I'm sorry, I'm catching up from yesterday. And I just, it's probably too late for any team to see this, but this was one of the...
Now, there was...
If anybody thought that January 6th was not an inside job to some extent, either, what do they have it? Lee Hop let it happen on purpose, or Me Hop made it happen on purpose. Anybody who thinks that it was not a Lee Hop or Me Hop, you should go have breakfast at an IHOP, and that's I happen on it. That's International House of Pancakes. Okay. Anybody who does not thoroughly and firmly believe that it was a Lee Hop, Me Hop, or just an outright setup, I'll present to you this exhibit right here.
Now, there was nothing preventing President Trump from sending out a tweet between 1:21 p.m. and 4:17 p.m. telling supporters who were at the Capitol to go home. Was there?
Who was he asking this question to? I forget. Was this Kash Patel?
Foundation.
Oh crap! I forget if he was asking Kash Patel this question. Kash Patel was the witness from yesterday, and he was amazing. It's amazing seeing a witness who's smarter than the lawyer, and I say that with no judgment to the lawyer's intelligence. He, might be very smart, but a witness who does not get fooled by answers. But he gave some great answers. But here, hold on.
Objection, Foundation.
Rephrase the question.
I'll rephrase. There's no authority that you're aware of, sir, that would have prevented President Trump from sending out a tweet between 1:21 p.m. and 4:17 p.m. telling the people to go home from the Capitol.
There's nothing that would have prevented Trump from sending out a tweet within the 3 hours of insurrection? Because insurrections last 3 hours. I mean, it's just insurrections are unarmed, last 3 hours, and end with the certification that was allegedly insurrected against. Yeah, that's insurrection. The only problem, does everyone do they not know things?
Now, there was nothing preventing President Trump from sending out a tweet.
What time?
Between 1:21 p.m. and 4:17 p.m. telling supporters who were at the Capitol to go home. Was there?
What was that? What was that time again? I couldn't hear.
17 p.m.
1:17.
Telling
Hold on. 1:7. What was it? 1:15.
1 p.m.
1 p.m.
4:17 p.m.
1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Nothing preventing him from sending out a tweet telling people to go home. No, but there were 2 tweets within those 3 hours, that time frame. And I'll quote it because it seems that, people couldn't really see these tweets after they suspended Trump's Twitter account on January 8th. Everybody remember the reason for which they suspended his account? We'll go to that in a second just to refresh our memories. Quoting Donald J. Trump at Real Donald Trump, January 6, 2021, 2:38 p.m., squarely within the 1 to 4 p.m. time frame. Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. But everybody knows that when he said that, it's right-wing doublespeak to incite extremists. It's an insurrectionist thing to say right there. Let's go to the next one.
Between 1:21 p.m. and 4:17 p.m. telling supporters who were at the Capitol to go home.
Oh, he didn't tell them to go home. So it's insurrection because all he asked them to do within that time frame, Mr. Lawyer, quote, tweet number 2 from Donald J. Trump. I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. Remain peaceful. Doublespeak. No violence. Doublespeak. Insurrectionist. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. What's the time on that? I can't see too good, Bill.
Was there?
What's the time on that? Yeah. 3:13. Zoom in, Dave. 3:13 p.m. January 6, 2021. This is it's a joke sham of a trial. It's a setup. It was a setup, either a lie hop, let it happen on purpose, or me hop, made it happen on purpose. And we know that. And I had Tarek Johnson on, who even though we're not, we don't see totally eye to eye on all of it, was quite clear that he believes it was a lee hop or me hop. He just thinks other players were involved or other actors were responsible. And what a convenient thing it was, by the way. Look at this. This is another one. I think this is, let me see here. This was all during Kash Patel's testimony. He was fantastic. Listen to this. Okay. This is the retweet. Hold on. Let's just go to the original tweet. Now let's just open up the video here. Listen to this.
And so just to close this out, to your knowledge, did any senior DOJ leader ever state in words or substance that they felt they needed more or different authorization from President Trump before they could deploy National Guard troops to keep the peace on January 6th? Okay, so Department of Defense,
DOD,
based on what you're telling us, felt they had authority to use National Guard troops, and President Trump had been clear that he wanted DOD to do what was necessary to protect the American people. So why didn't we have 10,000 National Guard troops suited up and armed guarding the Capitol on the morning of January 6th?
Remember, everybody, this was a very key. If you live through it in real time, backwards, life can only be understood backwards, but must be lived forwards. At the time, we all remember hearing a point being made. It wasn't Trump who could deploy the National Guard. That's under Nancy Pelosi's authority. And then there was some dispute as to whether or not it's Nancy Pelosi or, and I forget the chief policewoman who Tarek Johnson was referencing constantly, but everyone acts like, everyone acted at the time like it was a bald-faced lie and that only Trump and Trump only could unilaterally decide to call in the National Guard. Let's just hear what's coming out as evidence during this trial.
There's a multitude of reasons, but namely under the law as the Department of Defense is operated under.
So he says the audio is terrible, but this is Kash Patel via web testimony saying there's a number of laws. Oh, hold on, let me start again. I forgot what he said.
But namely under the law
under the law.
As the Department
that the DOD was...
To guidance by the Office of General Counsel and the White House Counsel's Office, and probably the last 100 years of National Guard authorities. Step one was a Commander-in-Chief's authorization, which we had.
Okay, so he's saying under the law of the Department of Defense and the last 100 years of American history, there's multiple steps. Step one is the authorization from the Commander-in-Chief, Trump. What's step two, Kash Patel, who served as, I forget his function now, but within the Department of Defense, I think for a bit, I'll get his title clearly in a second. What's step two?
Step two was a request by the governing body, the local governing body, usually the governor, but in this instance, it's the mayor since it's Washington, D.C., and or the heads of the Capitol Police Bureau, because we're talking about the Capitol building.
Step two was a request. So step one is authorization. Step two is a request, because it's not because the president, commander-in-chief, authorizes it that the local jurisdiction is requesting it. And what would it be if the commander-in-chief sent in the National Guard or a militarized force without the local jurisdiction requesting it? Well, I'll come back to Tim Pool's tweet in a second.
Absent those requests,
Absent the request.
we were under the advisement of our legal counsel's offices that we could not activate the National Guard.
We were under advisement that we could not activate the National Guard.
We could and did everything we could up to the legal limit to try to begin the processes of getting these folks ready in case that request came in. What I mean by that is...
This is another fantastically good point that I think will make good evidence to a judge if the judge is listening. She looks like she's listening. Who knows? Maybe she'll come down with the right decision. The National Guard has to be mobilized and deployed. And they're not just sitting around, as Kash Patel, who was, incidentally, by the way, his official title once upon a time was, he served as the former Chief of Staff to Acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller, and is responsible for the... Okay, there we go. I'll read that in a second. But let's hear what he has to say. So you get the authorization from the president. It requires a request from the local jurisdiction. Why?
People forget the National Guard is very part-time military. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're teachers, they're husbands, their wives, their fathers in the community. We have to go get them. And then after the request is made, we can do that and bring the authorities in that we have in the Office of the Secretary of Defense to bear. Because absent the request, we could not fully launch that process.
Absent the request, the need, they couldn't. Did they ever get the request? Oh, they got it after it was over. But now I'm not... Oh, come on. I want to see... What was... Oh, no. Don't do that. Come on, refresh. Something went wrong. Yeah, because I screwed up. And Tim Pool astutely notes... Talk about they were going to get him one way or the other. Send in the National Guard or send in a militarized police without the request. That would be the declaration of martial law. That would be an impeachable offense. Don't send in the National Guard because they didn't request it. Oh, you are passively inciting an insurrection. If Trump activated National Guard without a request from local officials, they'd have called it a military coup attempt. With which I say it was a damned if you do, damned if you don't, because they want to damn him. That's the bottom line in all of this. And I think Tim is 100% right. Remember at the time, one of the concerns was he's going to go rogue. He's going to invoke whatever that martial law clause was, and he's going to declare himself president through militarized force. Yeah. Had he gone in with a police force, a militarized force, a National Guard that wasn't requested by the jurisdiction, it would have been a coup. And he doesn't do it, not because he didn't do it, but because they didn't request it after he had authorized it. It's an insurrection. Make it make sense, except for the fact that it's just corruption top to bottom. Was there any... There were a couple of other ones. Kash Patel's testimony was phenomenal in any event. I don't know what they think they got out of him. There was one part where... I don't know if I shared the highlight yet, but where he's, they're trying to fault Kash Patel for not immediately taking offense to the contents of a Variety magazine article that was written about Kash Patel that he's saying contains some inaccuracies, and like, you didn't immediately get, you didn't do anything when Variety's magazine that contains inaccurate information about you came out. He's like, dude, I'm a busy man. We're focusing on important issues, and I wasn't one of those issues. But that's it. I think that's what happened yesterday in the trial, and it's getting worse and worse. It's getting worse and worse because it's not going anywhere. And Joe Neerman highlighted a very relevant point, and people need to appreciate this. I think I'm going to take credit for having called it first, but haha, it's a joke. Anybody with half a brain can see the problem here. They want to remove him from the ballot for insurrection in a civil trial in the absence of any criminal charges, short of what we're seeing in D.C., which has not been conviction yet, in the absence of any conviction, and only in the face of an acquittal on the impeachment for inciting the insurrection. And they want to apply a civil standard of burden of proof, preponderance of the evidence, which is not the criminal standard, which presumably would be required for a criminal conviction. Not presumably, which would be required for a criminal conviction. So they want to remove him from the ballot based on the civil balance of probabilities, which is a lesser balance than a criminal conviction, and they want to get him off on that, bypassing entirely any criminal conviction that hasn't even yet occurred. That's what they're trying to do here. It's corruption, institutionalized corruption, intellectual, election interference in real time. And it's too boring. It's too complicated for anybody to care about. And so you go from people not watching it whatsoever to the Neermans of the world live streaming it, which is going to be too long, too boring, and too complicated, to me attempting to summarize it and make digestible synopses, to people just not caring. They're going to read the news. Oh my goodness. A police officer was beaten at the January 6 events, the Dowling or whatever the guy's testimony was. Trump should be removed from the ballot. Oh, does everybody remember the justification for removing Trump from Twitter at the time? I mean, we've read this a little while ago, but it's worth repeating. That lawyer might not be aware of those two tweets within that 3-hour time frame. Stay peaceful, law and order, respect the police officers, all doublespeak. But he might not even be aware of them because Trump had been banned on the 8th. So nobody could see those tweets as of the 8th. Nobody could see the exculpatory, exonerating evidence until they reinstated him. How many years later? Read the justification of it at the time. Permanent suspension, already Orwellian, because that's just a ban. Permanent suspension. It's like calling death permanent sleep of Donald Trump. After close review of the tweets from the real Donald Trump, remember, the two, including the two that we just looked at, the two that said, stay peaceful, we're on the side of law and order. After close review of recent tweets from the real Donald Trump account and the context around them, I wonder if they had the same expert that's testifying at the trial, specifically how they are being received and interpreted on and off Twitter. This is not written by a 12-year-old high school student. This is the biggest, well, one of the biggest social media platforms in the world. Removing from the platform the sitting president of the United States of America. January 6th. Well, was he still the sitting president? That was the insurrection. That's right, because when was the inauguration? Whatever. We're, after reviewing the context around them, including how they are being received, being interpreted on and off the platform, we have permanently suspended the account due to the risk of further incitement of violence. In the context around horrific events this week, we made it clear on... Do you know who still has Twitter accounts? I won't mention any hyperbolic names that have accounts on Twitter currently. Hyperbolic people, organizations that are up to no good. In the context of horrific events this week, we made it clear on Wednesday that additional violations of the Twitter rules would potentially result in this very course of action. Our public interest framework, oh yeah, public interest, is that working with the Election Integrity Partnership? I want to look at that in a second, exists to enable the public to hear from elected officials and world leaders directly. It's built on a principle that people have a right to hold power to account in the open. However, we made it clear, going back years, that these accounts are not above our rules entirely and cannot use Twitter to incite violence peacefully, patriotically, law and order, stay peaceful, respect the officers, violence, among other things. We will continue to be transparent, bullshit, around our policies and their enforcement, bullshit. The below is a comprehensive analysis of our policy and enforcement. Okay, so we got, let me see here. Is peaceful? Oh, it's funny. The word peaceful is not in the tweets that they're talking about. Oh my goodness. Okay, those are the tweets. Here, I'll give this to everybody because everybody should remember this. But I wanted to see one thing here. Our public interest framework. What is this Orwellian rubbish? Unreal. Here, there's the link. Let me just go see what this world leaders on Twitter principles is an approach. Do we want to do this? I don't think I can do this right now. I can't do this in real time. I'll do that later and come back to you with anything if it's important. All right. So that's the latest out of Colorado.